Well, hello everyone. Good evening and welcome to the 27th Singapore Forum. We've been holding these sessions this past year ever since COVID kind of started in the middle of March. And we have, as a community, have banded together to talk about many different issues that aren't just COVID related, as we're beginning to learn, right? Sometimes they're about food, sometimes it's about mental health. Today, we want to talk about discrimination and racism that we might have experienced in the US and how we've been coping with it, and what are some cool ideas that we can have to address racism. I'm going to be sharing some materials here with the feedback that everyone in the community has been sharing with us. So we really appreciate all your contributions in the survey that you have sent to us. And let me just make sure this goes up. But, this has been a phenomenal series of sessions with the support of the Singapore Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Today we have with us Consul General William Chick. We have with us as well the folks from Singapore Global Network like David, as well as Michelle Ho, bringing both East-West elements of the team. And then we have, of course, SingaporeConnect. I'm the co-founder of SingaporeConnect, Jasmine Young, and we have Mark Sin as well, our president. So we have a number of special speakers today. Some aren't just speaking, some are actually demonstrating. What are we talking about? Today we actually have speakers talking about some of their thoughts and perspectives of racism in America and around the world. And we also have Janice Go, who is going to be sharing with us some really cool tidbits on self-defense, which is something that I think many in the community have been interested to learn more about. So we're very excited about this interactive session. We'll start off first with the discussion on anti-Asian sentiments with panelists across the US. We'll go into more of those introductions in a moment, but let us first begin with some opening remarks from the team here in terms of the topic we have at hand. Mark, do you want to start and kind of share with us some thoughts on this topic?
Well, this is a topic, even if it doesn't directly, affect you, I think it's something that you should be keenly supportive of, mostly from a part of not being a bystander, but taking an interest in supporting anything that reduces discrimination, racism, and in general hate in society. So it's very timely from where we have gone with a disease like COVID-19 that has caused many of us disruption in our lives to this topic, which has been simmering, I think, for many, many decades, if not throughout, I think, all our lives. But only something that, thanks, I think, to the power of the internet and social media, we have become more aware of how different people are affected. And so now I think it's very apt, as hopefully all of us have been recovering from the effects of COVID-19, that we put some attention on this topic that said, even if it doesn't affect you today, it's well worth your time to just reflect and think what we can do to make the world a better place.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. That's certainly very insightful. Thank you, Mark. Who's here today in our session? So we wanted to share with you some of the demographics of the session today, just so that we can get a better understanding of the different perspectives, right, of who we are and where we come from as a community in today's call. So of the 65 responses we had, we have a majority of folks who are interested
Try
in
and
today's
zoom in a little
conversation.
bit more, Jess.
Who are, okay, I'll try. Does this help, guys? Okay. So the majority of folks who are in today's call and who are interested in this topic are Chinese by descent. We have a second largest group would be mixed folks, which is actually really interesting. I think we'd love to talk a little bit more about those of us here who are of mixed parentage. I think actually Ashik's going to be a really good example of that too, right? And Pearlie, who herself is creating mixed people, mixed heritage folks. So really interesting dynamic to hear. In terms of age groups, we have a dominance of folks that are in the 41 to 50 age group. But then, of course, we certainly have, a significant number of us, more than almost half, right, who are sort of younger, which is really good to see too. We don't have anybody who's above 60, but in generational acceptance and ideas, we sort of have a more sort of people who are below 50, right, in this session. Now, how many years have we lived in the US? This I thought was interesting too, because we have a large number, at least 30%, right? A third of us have lived here for under 5 years. So that's actually still fresh, but not completely new. There's some folks 10% under 1 year. So those are folks that literally just arrived, right? As well, and experiencing all this fun firsthand. I mean, this has been an amazing 1 year, I would say, right? Coming in during the COVID period and into this new world that we now see and experiencing US so differently than some of us who have been here for more than over 20 years. So
I think
that's
what's
where I
very
am.
significant is 6 to 10 is almost half. It's half
Hmm.
actually of 1 to 5, and both are 5 year spans. So the number of
Hmm.
people coming in literally doubled between 5 years ago and now, 5 to 10 years ago and now.
It's 6 to 10, like 15% here.
Yes,
You're talking about.
50.4 versus 30.8, and both are 5 year spans. So you wouldn't expect that
Mm.
typically unless people are coming and leaving.
Yeah, so you probably have a lot of that. People come here very quickly and then they leave, but the ones that stay on don't may not be as much. So there's a threshold, right? Maybe for green card purposes or work um, purposes. Really cool. And this is the next one. Where do we come from? To William's point, we actually have folks from the East Coast now. We're holding our event earlier than normal in a day because we wanted to include the East Coast in this conversation, knowing that some of this nuance may be different across the United States, because Mark and I, of course, and a lot of this forum has been very much focused on the West Coast. But then, hearing from the folks in the New York zone, the East Coast folks, right, on what that's been going on and how they've been feeling is also important. And of course, we also have SoCal and folks from elsewhere. So you can see the second largest portion here, from the Mid-Atlantic region. But of course, West Coast Pacific still the core part. Interestingly enough, we have a whole bunch of people from the South Atlantic side of things too, which I suppose is the East Coast, New York, East Coast folks that Michelle's kind of like been working with as well. So welcome for those of you who are here for the first time. We certainly are glad to be able to have this conversation as a whole community, right, in Singapore, and giving that broad view of perspectives. Now, have we experienced any negativity? I've actually found this data really interesting because I would have thought, interesting enough, that this number may be larger, but we only actually have a third. Most people are not sure if they
Yes,
have
can you
experienced
scroll?
negative, um, you know,
The
experiences
screen is
personally.
not showing what your slide. Can you just scroll down?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I think I'm having a bit of a freeze here. Um, but I'll just read out the results as my computer catches up with my um, with our conversation here. So we have 44% of folks who think they maybe have experienced negativity. 23% of them are sure they haven't, and 32% of them feel they have. What's interesting about the maybe, I think, is that maybe they feel that it wasn't necessarily racism, but it could have been gender discrimination. It may have been some other thing that triggered that negative experience versus this on the whole. So that's another view to share as well. Okay, thanks, Mark. Let's keep rolling forward. So, on the topic of how frequently, as well, we have the concern of folks that actually, we were concerned that folks were experiencing very frequently, like 2 or 3 times a week, but actually that wasn't true. Um, it seemed to be more infrequent and perhaps once or twice. And again, we have the same lot of folks that said, hey, have not. So 27% don't really think they have experienced at all. Once or twice, a quarter of them feel they have experienced it once or twice in their entire time here, which is actually phenomenal as well. So I would say the next largest percentage of folks that have experienced it more frequently with 2 to 3 times a year. So let's go on to examples of negativity. And maybe we can, yeah, I've actually got that in the slide as well, Mark, but we can certainly stay here so we don't flip so much. So we certainly have a number of different comments here. Some of them are anti-Chinese, some of them are anti-Indian, some of them comment on the fact that they maybe it's sort of a positive comment, but it actually kind of shows their sense of things, like they will comment that our English is really good, or and in Pearlie's case, she talked about how they said, she was speaking Mandarin, right, to her child, and the someone commented that people in the U.S. should be speaking English. That's uh, that's another one of those very narrow-minded perspectives that I think we've all experienced before as well. And of course, we have a lot of these work-related incidents as well that folks are reporting in terms of discrimination. And we'll go into more of that during our conversation as well. So I'm going to pause here in case there are any more sort of comments from from the floor, from the audience here. Do we have any other like comments that you guys want to share in terms of your negative experiences? Does this resonate with you? Is this what we have experienced generally? Sorry, somehow we cannot see all the faces anymore. I only see Mark, so I can't see anybody nodding. There we go. All right. I know the panel is going to share some examples, but it looks like folks are essentially, like agreeing with this list here. All right, perfect. So let's move on to the next list. How do we think we can support each other? Let's go on. And we have lots of cool comments around this. Stand together. So, I mean, as I look at the trend around a lot of the voices here, generally speaking, we have folks basically asking or encouraging us all to stand together, not to keep quiet, don't be the, bystander, speak out. I heard a lot of speak out, share resources, um, raise awareness, as well as get to know each other. That's actually very positive. Instead of just reacting, it seems like some of the more proactive ones are essentially reaching out, showing more about our community and our culture. um, some encourage us to patronize Asian-owned businesses, educating others around, and standing with people who are speaking out, demanding change. So we have a whole spectrum from figuring out, how to support each other, to figuring out how to educate, right, in a more proactive way, other communities about what we are and who we are, and and the others among us also, like just drawing a fine line. They're saying there are a lot of resources for Asian Americans, but we don't fall into that category. So what does that mean, and how do we support each other? So cool insights. Thank you. Let's keep going. So, any thoughts on that? I think we'll have actually more in the discussion, to be honest, as we move ahead. Let's move on to what we would like to learn more about. So, a lot of the community here would like to certainly be more exposed to the resources available to us as a community. I think there's a lot of interest in essentially being exposed to some of the different resources that we have to uh, identify uh, racism, to be able to um, support and share, each other in some of these situations. And also, I think this came up to how to respond to a racist incident. Those are key areas where we're seeing a lot of interest around. So we'll cover some of these topics as we go through today's sessions. Now, final question here. Do we have any questions or suggestions? We have some, for the panelists, but I think we'll address some of these as we go along. So without further ado, let us get into the panel conversation today on the fly, but I'm glad that you had some information.
Yes.
Yes. And I thought it was interesting because I think we've been, and I know this is not a broad research, but it kind of directionally supports some of our concerns, right? Like that indeed we are more targeted because of the whole Kung flu,
Yeah.
Wunan virus thing. And then of course necessarily, we feel more stress as a result of that, right? And from a mental health perspective, because even though we're not responsible for it, but it's sort of, somehow feel that the eyes on the world are on us when even when we don't necessarily deserve it. So
Yeah.
appreciate that perspective. Thank you. Um, yeah, so wow, everyone, these are deep conversations and we truly appreciate your thoughts, and I know we can go on for a long time, and the fact that we all got together today to kind of go through some of these issues and sort of commiserate, right, on our concerns, I think is brings a lot of power to our community. Michelle actually shared some interesting resources with us. Michelle, would you like to go through them? Slide 12. Don't know if you're still around.
Hi.
Hi,
Yeah,
Michelle.
sure.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so these are some resources that I think a few members in our community has also kind of been sharing quite widely as well. This is obviously not um, exhaustive. There are a lot more out there, but hopefully this will serve as a good, I think, start to anyone who's looking for more materials to read up, on what's going on right now. I think what was particularly useful for me, and I think Pearlie shared earlier on as well, was the free training for bystander intervention after witnessing harassment, as well as for those experiencing harassment themselves. I actually attended those virtual trainings, and some of the strategies that they've suggested, they might seem intuitive after you hear about them, but I think they will be useful. Hopefully, we won't get a chance to actually need to use them. That's good to have kind of on standby as well. And of course, I'm sharing here as well two articles written about their experiences by Singaporeans in the US. So one of them is a police article that was published in Today Online, as well as Jareen's article. So Jareen is a Singaporean living in Massachusetts, and she was talking about how her reflections after the recent speed of incidents. Thanks, Jasmine.
Oh yeah, for sure. One thing I want to add before we go into Genesis portion on self-defense, which is really important, and I know everyone wants to feel empowered, but one thing that is really even more empowering, I feel, is the concept between tolerance and acceptance. I know we always talk about racial tolerance, tolerating each other's differences, and that word itself already suggests compromise and discrimination. I feel like the way to approach this typically is to really accept, and to really appreciate the differences among us as distinctive characteristics that make us special as a world, as a global community, right? And it's our special characteristics that make us powerful and compelling in the workplace as well. Like I really embrace my fellow folks from different countries around the world, right? And because I feel like they help us communicate with others, sell my product better and all that. There are all of empowering notions and bridges that my little team builds up because we are diverse as a team. So it's not that I really am concerned when I hear things about how we need to be more tolerant to each other, because tolerance is such a compromise. I know tolerance, as Najib and I are talking about on the side, right, supports the status quo for sure, because people want those battle lines drawn, right? But the fact that they're drawing battle lines suggests it's us versus them, which is not as integrated and as appreciative. So I know when we first came up with this thing on this forum, I was concerned about stop Asian hate. And I know we have a lot of that rhetoric out there in the market as well. Stop Asian hate. It's very easy to kind of gravitate around such a catchy phrase, but it's very negative as well. And we should be appreciated. We should be loved. We have so many interesting things about our culture, our food, our people that the tolerance side just suggests that people are still, suggests that if we tolerate Americans, we tolerate the blacks, we tolerate, people who wake up late. I don't know. It just sounds like, you actually hate that activity. And so I'd like to encourage us to communicate more as a community of how we can build those bridges. All right, Pearlie, you got your hand up. Do you have a comment?
Oh, yes, I was just going to say, don't tolerate it. Don't sit on the fence until what's at stake is the life of your loved one. Not everybody has to marry a black person to care about a black person. One of the biggest things I've learned is just because my Malay and Indian friends in Singapore have never spoken to me about racism and prejudice doesn't mean that they were not traumatized by it and they didn't go through it. It's just the fact that if they talked about it while every single day they were living it, their entire life would be consumed by it. So don't put the burden on people who are experiencing it to have to talk about it. Rather, don't tolerate it, support them. And
Yeah.
that's what being a community actually means.
That's right. Thank you for that. Janice is also saying, what she learned from our diversity conversations at the university is to learn to show grace to one another. We can be ignorant of our own ways and still all be learning to love one another. That is true. And I know some of you have gone through this. You're going like, but I can't love those guys. I can't believe they keep, like they will keep saying I smell, like I cook strange food, blah, blah, blah. But hey, I think that's part of the journey that we have to make as a society, to building those bridges. So thanks for saying that, Pearlie. And you're right. I mean, we probably all can't marry, like everyone that is not us, not, like whatever, like I can't marry, I've already married someone, so I can't marry someone else again. But I can certainly have dinner with you. I can certainly get to know you and can certainly have more interactions, which I think will certainly help grow. And I've learned from that. And I think that as a Singaporean community, we can bring a lot of these lessons back home as well to drive that greater integration of our society. So thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to just go a quick round to some of our leaders on this call to see if they have any sort of parting words. David, you've been really quiet. I know you've been working behind the scenes as well, but I think you're on the call. Do you have any messages for us? Okay, don't know where he is. How about, oh, there we go. Hi, David.
Hey, hello, Jess.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, so I think, like I mentioned earlier in the chat, wanted to thank Pearlie, Eileen, and Ashik for being so vulnerable. I think it's not easy to step out to share about your experiences, especially for some of us who, some of these experiences, like Pearlie has shared, are very, very personal. It concerns your family. It's been something that you have experienced over the years. It puts you in a vulnerable spot, especially. So I really, really appreciate the trust that you have in the community, in us to openly share about experiences to everyone, so that hopefully all of us are more aware, especially for those of you out there who have been experiencing discrimination, to know that you are not alone in that sense. There is a supportive community. There are people who are undergoing the same thing, and we can all help each other by sharing about resources, about some of the best practices, and so on. So I'm glad that actually Singapore Connect, Jasmine and Mark came up to do this forum, because it goes to show how much as a community we have matured when we are able to come out forward and be frank and open to everyone, to share about our experiences and help each other. Yeah, so thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thanks, guys. Indeed. Thanks, David, for always orchestrating things behind the scenes, as well as nudging and supporting and nudging us along. Michelle, any parting words from your end?
Hi. Likewise, just would like to thank all of you for being here today. I think just even showing up is quite powerful as well. And I think all the sharing today has really made us feel less alone. I think especially for members of our community who might not live in geographical proximity, to say other Singaporeans or other members in the SGN community. Hopefully this makes you feel less alone and in your experiences as well. And your every voice is important, and it matters. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks. Here. Thank you. There's actually another super fun portion that is more active coming up, and that's by Janice Go, and she's going to go through how do we get empowered physically from a self-defense perspective. And these tips, actually, I might add, are applicable for robberies, for all sorts of adverse situations, like if someone is trying to get your space in the bus. No, I'm just kidding. But if you want to essentially feel a little bit more protected, she's got some cool ideas to help us as well. And you've heard from Janice before. Now she's also going to teach us and share some thoughts on how we can stay safe through some self-defense. Janice?
Yeah, thanks, Jess. Yeah, so actually my side hobby is martial arts, and yeah, so when like Jess was asking, like, can we find someone, I just thought, hey, since I do have some contacts, I should just take a stab at it. So I wouldn't say that I'm the best person, but I did go through this presentation with one of my previous masters from the World Hamudo HQ. So it's also a martial arts group. So the guy who vetted this with me is a real martial arts instructor. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And so definitely, like, I think if you have gone for some of those like bystander trainings and so on, they will have probably covered similar points. And so like you might, and I'm definitely doing this at a very shallow level, not on the same level that some of these other trainings might do, but I hope that some of these tips can help you. And more importantly is to, as we have all mentioned, to learn that we're not alone in most of this. Okay, so it's just going to be pretty quick content. So actually the first thing that's more important than learning how to do self-defense is actually this thing called situational awareness and learning how to respond and be aware of your surroundings. Okay, so what is situational awareness? So things like, for example, knowing your location, where you are. Okay, so certain places will definitely be more dangerous than others, as we have known in the US. So like, for example, in San Francisco, there are certain places where you just don't want to walk around at night, whatever your race or gender is, yeah? So this is San Francisco, like for example, in San Francisco being downtown certain areas, it's just more dangerous. And also be aware of your surroundings. So things such as, re-examine your commuting habits. Are you consistently plugged in, consistently glued to your phone? Because that's when, if you are distracted, it's easier for people to do things to you. And also, yeah, just in general, you're more prone to accidents. I would say I've done it before. I'm not very proud of that, but yeah, so being aware is important, especially when you're in locations where you know it's not always the safest. Okay. So usually like these tips alone should be able to help you to get out of most situations. Like, because if you are in a safe location, or like if you're 5 miles away from an attacker, there's no way they can attack you, right? Yeah. So however, if you do end up in an uncomfortable situation, I mean, the first and foremost, okay, this is not victim blaming, but as much as possible, avoid being in this situation. So for example, should you do if you feel unsafe? Okay, so the first thing to do is to try to get out as fast as you can. Okay, so a good example is, a lot of girls know this. Okay, if you think someone is following you, where would you go or what would you do? Okay, give you a few seconds, 5 seconds if anyone wants to write something in the chat. Okay, so if not, okay, so the most important thing is, as much as possible, try to change the circumstance or environment. And so what this means, yeah, trust your gut, is to actually go to where people are. Okay, I've seen things in the chat. Yep, into a well-lit place, okay, on the opposite side of the street, yes, that works. So more importantly is to go to where people are, because in general, when people want to attack you or do something funny to you, they won't want to do it in a big crowd. So actually, I've had remarks from people who are San Francisco natives that they actually feel very safe in the Tenderloin. Not because it's a very safe area, but because there's just always people going about in the Tenderloin, that like, even though it can seem scary at times, where there's a lot of people, stuff is less likely to happen than, let's say, in a dark alleyway or on an empty street. Okay, so usually, like especially in a city area, I designed this this presentation with the Bay Area people in mind, but in you should be able to find similar situations where you are located. So things like, try to go to a store, you can approach people like store managers, or if you happen to be on a street in like a suburban area, you can knock on the door or try to open it. Okay, not because you want to break in, because very likely when you do that, people will respond to you and then you can ask for help. Okay, so this is how you change the environment. Okay, yeah. So other things we can do is things like, how can we keep safe together as a community? So firstly, things like travel in groups. There's definitely strength in numbers. It's more likely, you are always more likely to be attacked if you are alone by yourself than if it's 2 people or 3 or even more. Yeah. Okay. And then, yeah, so one of the examples, it's easy to walk around together in San Francisco. So if you do go out for a late night together, walk home together, And I think as a community, if we do feel that there's a concern or we feel unsafe for the more vulnerable members of our community, we can definitely also help to escort people around. I do believe that that's what community is for, is to just help one another and just be there for people. Yeah. Okay. And this is something that I've always been doing as a girl, and I realized that it's very international. It's not only something my Singaporean girlfriends do, it's something that even my friends here do, and they are of all different races. Is that if we go out late, we will all text one another, "Have you gotten home safe?" And like we do reply to one another. So I think as a community, we can keep this to not just girls only, but to everybody, just to check in on one another and make sure like we are safe. Yeah. Okay. And the other thing is also similar to what Ashik mentioned, like the sharing your iPhone location thing. So you can do that, or a similar thing is to have a trusted friend you can call or text as backup. So one of the examples that I was given was, if you have a friend that you can text 911 to, so that they will know you're in trouble. This is just an example, but I think what Ashik talked about is a really great idea as well. Yeah. So yeah, definitely in community, it's safer. Yeah. Okay. And we also remember, for your own mental health, that we are not alone. We actually all help. We're actually all around to help one another. Okay. So now a bit about self-defense weapons. Okay, so I know there's been a lot of questions about, what should I buy? Should I buy pepper spray? Should I buy a knife? Should I buy a gun and all that? So anything is, before you purchase or carry around a self-defense weapon, okay, you have to ask yourself the few following questions, because actually everything is a double-edged sword. A double-edged sword is also a weapon, but everything is a double-edged sword. Okay, so firstly, have you been trained to use it? All right. So for example, if you read like reviews on Amazon for pepper spray, right? A lot of people will say, "Oh, I carry it at the bottom of my backpack." Like if it's there, you're not going to be able to reach it easily. Okay. And like, do you know how to use it well? Do you know what the safety catch is? Do you want to consider things like wind direction and all that? I am not trained to use pepper spray, so this is my personal choice that I don't carry around one. Okay. And the other thing is, are you confident in using it properly and effectively? Okay. Because otherwise it can be a crutch instead, which means that you think, "Oh, I'm carrying around a pepper spray, therefore nothing bad can happen to me." This is not true. Okay. Whether or not you carry around a pepper spray, bad things can still happen to you. And it's whether or not you can use it well that makes a difference. Okay. And in the worst case scenario, it can be used on you. All right. So an example that's always given to me is, if you carry around a knife and you don't know how to use it, it's very easy to lose your grip on it. Okay. In self-defense classes, we actually do practice with model knives. It's actually really easy to whack a knife out of somebody's hand. I mean, what's stopping the attacker from taking it and stabbing you instead? All right. So self-defense weapons, I will only say use and buy them if you know how to use them properly. Otherwise, this is why you come for my lesson today, where you can just use your hands instead to try and defend you. And more importantly, don't try as much as possible not to be in such situations. Okay. So essentially what self-defense skills are, it's a lot like insurance. Okay. So the way I say it is like, for example, you buy earthquake insurance, fire insurance here, right? But nobody says that because I bought earthquake insurance, I want an earthquake to hit my house and I have everything destroyed. I think most people will never say that. Okay. Unless me. Yeah. So essentially self-defense is the same. It's like insurance. You hope to never use it, but if and only if these things happen and you are really in a pinch, you use it to get out. All right. So my philosophy is, if you don't get into a fight at all, you cannot be hurt. Okay, simple advice. Don't think that, oh, because I'm a martial artist, I can go around and try to like practice on people or find trouble. Like, don't do that, because if you don't fight, then you won't be hurt. Okay. So the aim of these skills is to escape safely. It's not to be the hero. Even though we do see a lot of gratifying videos like, wow, okay, I beat up the person, I feel very good. Okay, but that's not the point. Okay, the more important thing is to be able to run. Okay, being a coward actually saves you. Yeah, okay. So what's important is, okay, everybody can do this together if you have your video on. Okay, whenever you do self-defense, always make sure your hands are up to protect your head. Okay, because this is the most vital organ. It has a lot of vital organ and it has all your 5 senses. Okay, so now I'm going to stop the sharing. Yeah, you can continue to spotlight my video. Okay, so a few simple strikes that you can do. First one is a hammer fist. So what this is you literally make a fist. Okay. And what you do is it's essentially pounding on the table like this. Okay. If you're angry, everybody can do that. Okay, everybody try together. 1, 2, 3. And hit as hard as you can. This is your strength. All right. So now where do you hit this? Okay. So another thing I want you to do is take your palm. Okay. Press it against your nose. This one don't hit, just press. Okay. Do you feel uncomfortable? Uncomfortable, right? Okay. So this is exactly where you hit. You want to hit the nose itself. Okay. And so a fun thing is that if you hit hard enough, the nose is actually connected to your tear ducts. So if you hit that, actually your eyes will water as well. Okay. I mean, don't hit yourself. Okay. This is just for you to know. So essentially you will hit there. All right. But if you want to test your strength, if you bang the tables enough. Okay. So essentially you just hit the attacker. This is a very natural movement. You can actually just do this. I twist my hand to gain more momentum, but if not, just this is fine. Okay, so you can practice this. Okay, so essentially hit the attacker, they are in pain, you run. Okay, simple strike. Okay, and then the second strike that I would like to teach. Okay, this one is called the tiger claw. So for example, if they're a bit further away, this cannot reach. You can also go for the throat. Okay, so I mean, this one you can practice with people, but don't target the throat. Okay, if you want to test your strength, what you do is you can get a friend or someone who lives with you in the same household. Okay, you can practice against the shoulder by hitting on the shoulder instead. Okay, and then pretend it's like the throat. Okay, because your shoulder is obviously a lot more sturdy than your throat. Okay, if you want to practice to feel your own strength, and essentially some of these exercises, don't do it on doing it on yourself isn't very effective. You need to do it on someone else. It's just that I have nobody, so I'm doing it on myself. Okay, yeah. So it's just for you to build confidence that you can do these skills, okay, without much training. All right, and then the last one we have is the palm strike. Okay, so what the palm strike is essentially you want to hit either the nose again or the chin. Okay, so what you have to do is you use the heel of your palm, okay, and then you just strike upwards. Okay, but I would encourage you that if possible, either do the hammer fist or the tiger claw first over this, because this one's a bit more technical, and if you're not careful, you can hurt your fingers. Okay, because some people do it like that. So I do it like that, but it's up to you. You can do it both ways. Okay, you can also do it with your left hand. So all this is one strike. As much as possible, run. Don't go further than that. Okay.
So I have a quick question. You would talk a lot about striking. What about scratching? I mean, is that a weapon as well, or do they not recommend it because it ruins our nails?
I mean, I would say scratching is possible as well. Like, yes, some self-defense would say if you are that close, you can scratch the eyes and whatnot. Definitely, you can do that. It's just what works and gets you out of the situation as fast as possible. The list is not exhaustive.
Got it.
Yeah. I mean, like all those poke the eyes out, that if you can do it, go ahead. I mean, my favorite has always been poke the armpit, but
how's that going to help? Would that tickle and make them laugh? I mean,
no, when we poke
the armpit?
When we poke, we drive, we do a spear hand like this and we drive it all the way through to the armpit. It has been demonstrated on me before. It's a very awful feeling.
Interesting.
Okay? But some of this we don't teach because this is over Zoom and usually we want to do it with partners. Okay, yeah, but we don't scratch each other's eyes.
Okay. What about striking the groin? I think you know that's like the classic zone, right? That we typically think of.
Yeah, so this is where we move on to kicks. Okay, so I mean, the easiest one is your groin kick. Okay, so just a foot up to the groin. You use the flat part of your foot. Okay, yeah. Okay, I train taekwondo, that's why I can lift my foot like that. Okay?
But what do you mean by flat part of the?
So the flat part of your foot, it's here. So essentially straighten out your leg and then kick upwards. Okay, unfortunately, let me see if I can bring my camera down a bit. Yeah, so yeah, sorry, I am using wired headphones. So flat and up. Yeah, so essentially just kick up, okay? Yeah.
Got
You
it.
don't want to kick if your toe's sticking out just because if you hit something else, you might hurt your toe. Okay. And then the other strike I have for in terms of kicking is that if you don't want to kick the groin, if the person's shin, for example, is out, okay. So like if the person's shin is out here this way, you can actually stomp down on their shin instead. Okay. So the shin area is actually very sensitive, or you can just stomp on their foot. Okay, but down the shin, it will hurt a lot. It's a very awful feeling. If you want to try, what you can do is, if you just run your finger down your shin, you will feel there is this weird sensation that will happen. So if you stomp hard enough, that should put people in pain for a while, enough for you to get out. Okay, so remember, all of this is not because we want to mess up a person. It's just because we want to get out and be safe. If you feel that this is enough to consider it like an assault or something that requires police intervention, definitely get to a safe area, call the police, call 911 as fast as once you are in a safe area. I mean, don't call 911 in front of your attacker, in case they recover really quickly and take away your phone and whatnot. So do it in a safe area. Yeah. Okay.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
so yeah, I mean, this was just meant to be a short sharing. Okay, so let me share my screen again. Okay. So yeah. So oops. Yeah, so in summary, okay, 3 things that you need to remember in case this was pretty fast. Yeah. All right. So firstly is be aware of your surroundings. That's the most important. Okay, because if you're not aware, also none of this will work. Okay. And if you do, and I think it's also very important that working together as a community to keep one another safe is probably a great defense as well. Like not everything needs to be punching and kicking to be resolved. Okay. And the aim of self-defense is to escape, ideally before anything. And if and only if all the above, which is point 1 and 2 fail, then you strike and escape. Okay. This is what self-defense is. It's not about being the hero. Yeah. Okay. So maybe I will stop here, and if anyone has questions, you can ask me, or yeah, otherwise I do realize it's late, then we can also end. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Now I know a lot of guys have done NS, so they probably feel like super garang, maybe. What happens if the attacker runs after you? What should you do?
I mean, the first and foremost is that if the attacker runs after you, I mean, it's being similar in a like similar uncomfortable situation, right? Try to go to where people are. Okay, try to get help as fast as possible, because usually I would think an attacker is more likely to give up when there are more people who can support you. Like if it's a very like so I mean what I was told was like, for example, go into a store, ask for the store manager, say I need help. Okay, or ask whoever's at the cashier, I need help. Okay, or if not, if you're really desperate, just push their merchandise. This is not the most recommended, but if you start pushing their merchandise to the ground, people will definitely react, because they're like, hey, you're coming in here, you're messing up my store, what's happening?
Yeah. That makes sense, right? Basically being disruptive so that the attacker then kind of thinks twice about pursuing you because you're entering a situation with even more chaos or created it. Got it. I've been advised to throw up. I've been advised to definitely stomp on feet or act really crazy, so they see and aggressive, because sometimes they want you to be the weaker party. They want to exert some kind of dominance, but if you strike back, they get a bit stunned, because usually it's the psychology here is potentially it's the cowards that are preying on the weak. But when they see that the weak aren't necessarily weak, they get a little more taken aback.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks, Jess, for asking that. I think it's very important to note that, I mean, there's 101 ways to defend yourself, but more importantly is that you can defend yourself when the situation happens. Okay, so what I've learned from my own martial arts training is that a lot of times that as city people or like people who grew up in Singapore, we're actually very used to, if we're attacked, we actually tend to freeze or stand still. Okay, so the most important thing is that if you do end up in an aggressive situation, to be able to have the mentality to snap out of being frozen and do whatever you can to get out of the situation as fast as possible. So like I think one of the heroes that I really have is the what I think everyone calls her the SF granny now. That when she got punched in the
Yes.
face, she attacked back.
Right.
Yeah. So essentially it's to have that same kind of mentality that if I'm attacked, I need to defend myself. Yeah.
That's really cool advice. Thank you so much, Janice. I'm going to kind of open the floor up to folks who have always thought of trying certain moves, but they're not really sure if it would work. Girly, do you have questions for Janice?
No, I don't. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. I think it was pretty comprehensive. I see one from Susan. Do you have tips on what we should do if we are grabbed from behind and our arms are pinned to our bodies?
Grab from behind and our arms are pinned to our bodies. So
Like this, I suppose. Is that
so
right?
I mean there are martial arts moves for that, but usually that requires a bit more training. I think the first thing to do would be as much as possible to yell, shout for attention. Okay? And then
Do you think we could use our hands to attack their groin from behind if our arms are pinned? I mean, could we use
so I
our
mean
hands to attack
yeah,
them?
so it depends on how you are grabbed from behind. So there's a few ways. Like for example, I don't know how to I don't have a person to demonstrate on, but these are slightly more advanced techniques. I would say the most important thing is to shout, try to pull away, and when you so what happens is that if they will try to pull you towards them, right? So push forward, okay, to pretend you're resisting, and then push back. So they will use their own strength against them, and hopefully they will fall backwards, get out of the grip,
Got it.
and
Yeah,
run
good
away.
point.
If not, the other thing you can do is to use your foot and try to stomp on their foot. Yeah.
Got it. That's when our stiletto heels become very helpful, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Heels.
Very cool. I do
Number
like the
one
idea
killer.
that just push, use their bodies, right, to kind of get them off balance. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but more importantly, yell, shout for help as much as possible, because any reaction you can get, usually like as you say, Jazz, like anything to unnerve them usually helps the most.
Got
Yeah.
it. Got it. Thank you.
Can I make a comment? Right.
Yes.
So, but sometimes it all depends, right, what they have. Right. I mentioned this because like many years ago, I was in SF also, right? So like we were kind of like met up with friends after dinner and we were saying goodbye at their doorstep, right? Then someone just came right in between us. We're two couple, right? And then they pull out the gun. So if they have a weapon, to me, it's like, do not do anything. Because after that, I was told, right, then they go around, ask us to drop the wallet, right? Everybody drop the wallet, but I try to negotiate. I say, well, can I keep my ID? Right? You can take the money, can I keep my ID? Later on, they say these are stupid things to do. They could just trigger the gun and then shoot me, right? So I think it all depends also when we want to fight back. If there's certain weapon that we know we couldn't fight them, we just do not react at that time. I mean, right? Do not do some stupid things like what I did before.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point you brought up. Thanks for bringing that up. I think so, like, in such situations, they always talk about drop the wallet, throw the wallet. So you get them away from you, they get what they want, but you keep your life. That is more important. Yeah. So yeah, definitely if you ever do end up inside such a point, yeah, do what you can to escape first. Because your life more important. ID can remake, money can make again.
That's
and
true.
Renter's insurance will pay when you get robbed.
Got it. Got it. Hey, well, Karen says her husband carries a fake wallet for this purpose, so he can kind of toss it aside.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a good idea. Although these days, I think like this is just a fun thing, because now most of us actually carry only credit cards in SF.
Yeah,
Certainly I do.
true.
I don't carry cash. Like, yeah, just take the credit card. it's gonna be cancelled in an hour anyway. Yeah.
True. Yeah, I don't carry any cash too. That makes a great point. But great. Any other questions or concerns, things you've always wondered about? I've always thought that it's harder to attack the groin than the movies. The movies always seem to make it so easy, but it feels like even just throwing up the weight, right? In that circumstance is hard. And I also find that I'm not a violent person, so my first response isn't necessarily, oh, let me, like stab the person or hit the person as well. Um, so to your point, how do you unfreeze yourself? What's a good way to practice? Do you think we should practice this on people in our family just to try things out?
Well, I mean, that's a good point, Jess. So usually that's why we have martial arts training.
Mm-hmm.
And usually martial arts training is to get this thing called the martial mind where we learn to react. So I would like to think I'm not a violent person as well. I have never beaten up anyone in my life. Okay. Um, so like some of the things we do are like we do things like light contact sparring. So like definitely in sparring, someone comes after you, you have to react. You either have to block it, avoid, or strike back. So if you would like to be trained more on this, I would encourage you to go for some self-defense classes or like sign up for some martial arts classes where they do have such things, even though it could be hard now because of COVID. So it's harder. I mean, otherwise the main things you can do is just practice some of the moves and remind yourself these are easy. Trouble, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Well, I think, this has been tremendously helpful. I'm getting a lot of feedback on the chats as well that this session is very interesting, especially since folks have always been wondering what to do. We don't necessarily, like you said, we're city folk. We don't get a chance to use our bodies physically like this in a situation where we're directly antagonizing someone. Before we sign off, I just want to, pass on to any one of the guys. Ashik, I know you're taking notes, right, for some of your friends as well. How do you have any other questions on this side? How does this compare with what you have learned previously?
I think it's a good reminder on tips, right? Like Janice, you're obviously very experienced, and I didn't even think about like, oh, if you're being grabbed from behind, how would you deal with it? I think it's very important to like you said, call out for help and protect yourself first. I think that self-preservation becomes even more important than anything else. In the army, we always say don't get young, don't do things that you can't get out of. So I think today has been a good reminder for all of us on, even for me, even if I'm a guy, that don't be so kekiang and don't do things that you will get yourself into further trouble. You just need to protect yourself, preserve your life, and sometimes the best way is just to give whatever you need to give and live another day so that you can live to tell the story as opposed to live and not be able to tell the story.
True. It's a great point, Ashik. Because I'd say that sometimes I think we think we're dealing with rational folks that have a certain purpose of robbing you or something. But maybe, as we saw, there's a bunch of people with mental health issues and they're not rational. So trying to negotiate with them through some rational moves may not be the path. So that makes sense. Janice, any comments there too to what Ashik was saying?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree as well. Yeah, so thanks for that reminder. Yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of the Don Kei Kiang is very true. And it's more important for self-preservation, but also to look out for one another. So like I think what a lot of women do is that as a community, if you do happen to see someone else being harassed or being uncomfortable in a public space, you can pretend to be their friend. And that's where you find your numbers, Because I think if you do that for others, others will also do that for you. And when you know each other, when you know your neighbors, it's even better because you're like, hey, that's my friend. I'm definitely going to help my friend. Or like, hey, that's my friend. I can definitely go to my friend or my neighbor for help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Great point. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for, joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Janice, for sharing your really cool advice on what we can do in the event of, an aggressive situation. Certainly, you've given us some really good tips that I think we should go back and practice on. So I know this recording is probably going to be made available so folks can kind of review them and go back to you for advice and practice, right? That,
Yeah.
All the pounding, which we can do. The pounding, the claw, the tiger, the tiger claw.
Yeah, if you don't remember, just remember this. Okay,
Just
because
this,
it's very
right?
natural.
And then this
the
feels like I
nose.
might wreck my wrist, but this is
This, just this.
some pretty cool
Remember?
moves, I think.
Remember this. That's all.
Yes. And of course, the peaceful path forward, which was the panel that we had earlier. Thank you, Ashik, Pearlie, and Eileen for sharing some really cool insights. I think this is how the community comes together and support each other. We talk about it and we give each other advice on tidbits, right, on how we can take care of ourselves. So thank you all for stepping up. I know it's late this evening, but I certainly appreciate all your time today. Mark, parting words before we sign off?
Well, thank you all of the panelists again. These stories were very powerful, and Janet's tips, yours were very directly actionable. Thank you.
Yes.
One
indeed.
quote I'll remember: it's good to hear that 80% of the people react positively to speaking about your diversity. So I think that's very encouraging, and there's hope that it can be higher. Looking back, although Jazz and I have been holding Singapore-oriented events for over 2 decades, this is the first full year, we've opened up to approaching so many topics. It has really enlightened us, and we hoped for all of you, of our rich and diverse community here, you can be very proud of everyone who has stepped up out of their comfort zone, whether to help, share, or do whatever they can to make things happen, make things better. So I just want to thank you, everyone.
Yes, indeed. Well, with that, thank you all for joining us this evening. Hope you have a wonderful week ahead. Please feel free to reach out to our panelists if you have any more questions as well. I know they're excited to hear from you. I know Janice is, she's got a lot to share as well, and cool ideas of how we can defend ourselves. And thanks so much for sharing your stories. I think it was very cathartic for some of us. I'm seeing from the messages on the side as well. I mean, many of you appreciated the opportunity to share some of the difficulties we have been experiencing, individually and as a community, and that, of course, the kind of resources we have available to each other. So I want to thank again Singapore Ministry of Foreign Affairs, William and Hui Hui for joining us today, Singapore Global Network, who really partnered with us here to make this session possible, with David and Michelle, thank you. And of course, signing out now from SingaporeConnect. Bye for now. Good night, everyone. Have a great week ahead.
Jasmine, thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.